For this patient, we have already designed our implant placement, placed our nerve on both sides, and did the jaw segmentation. And if you can see at each individual implant placement, we really have two options here. One is to place the implant at this level, real deep in the jaw, and then come back and reduce this manually, or make a bone segmentation guide or a bone reduction guide for this patient. So what you can kind of see here is when I try to level out the jaw and level with the posterior segments, that's pretty much as deep I was willing to go with these areas. So what we want to do is just horizontal plane this out, and then if you can, from this area up, that's about 1.5 millimeters, subcrestal, 1.6, 1.7, 1.2. So 1 to 1.5 millimeters subcrestal. You can obviously change these dimensions when you actually do the implant placement. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to show you how to design the bone reduction guide. And this was taught. There's many different ways to do that. This is just one of the ways. But essentially what you do is you want to click on the bone model and make sure that you can see all the implants in position. And we're going to go into the guide panel. We're going to click on mandible. We're going to click on draw curve. Also, make sure your module is turned on to advanced mode. That's a key so you can see this. So we'll click on mandible once again. We'll press draw curve. Make sure you hold down the shift key. We'll draw like this and go as deep as you want to. Okay. So that's what we have here. It's also helpful if in your surfaces, when you click on the mandible, if you give it some transparency, so you can kind of see where you're at. Click off the original, kind of see where your guide is, your figures are. So you go back in the guide panel. We'll have to redraw this. So usually what I'll do is I'll put it at the level of the implant. Oh no, I'm not going to be going past that. All right, edit curve. Something like this. We'll have to lay a pretty decent flap. Oop. Make sure my implants are locked. Okay, so and again, what I failed to tell you guys is we need to make a bone reduction guide and a pilot drill guide, because that's what I'm going to be doing for this case. All right, everything looks good here. Okay, so first let's whack this off. All you really want to do is go into, okay, so depending on how much bone we want to reduce, we'll go and click on surfaces, click on our bone model, and press, well, let's see, actually, we'll in the guide panel, we'll press create surgical guide, just like this. And then we'll get the surgical guide. Now I'll go into implant panel, turn off these guide sleeve tubes. At this point, what I'd like to do is go into surfaces, surgical guide. I will reduce this transparency in the surgical guide and be ready to reduce the mandible. So I will press cut tool. Make sure this is highlighted. Press cut tool, hold down the shift key, and do one continuous sweep. And this is what it gives you. It'll give you a bone reduction guide into this area. So now what I'll do is I'll click on this and then kind of follow the same line. Actually, look, I'm going to back up a couple steps and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to press on cut for the surgical guide. Cut, hold down the shift key, reduce this. And then what I'm going to do is come back and click on the bone model, click on the shift key, and follow the same line. Okay, so now we have a bone reduction guide already. And now all I have to do is turn back on the guide sleeve tubes, take off the surgical guide, and we're going to call this surgical guide for bone reduction. And now I'm going to press on guide panel, draw curve, same thing. Edit curve. And I kind of like to make them look very similar. So this is just one of the many ways you can make a bone reduction guide. And that's pretty much it. At this point, you just press create surgical guide. So now you have two guides, a bone reduction guide, a surgical guide for the pilot drills. So you'll reduce the bone, then place the pilot drill guide, then make your pilot drills, then finish the osteotomies. So that's what this looks like when it's all said and done. Again, turning off these. So this is now on the new bone cut. And what you could do is when you turn off the surfaces, turn off the bone model. You can look at the intaglio surface and see how smooth it is. That's the new, or how flat it is. It's the new surface that we just cut. This is the lingual artery. You want to be very careful to avoid. We can turn our nerves off. Let's see. Turn our implants off. So here's our two guides, and they should fit one on top of the other. Like that. And we will just 3D print both of these, and you can even 3D print the bone model that's been segmented. And we'll be able to replace our implants. Again, this is these implants are at 3.1 millimeter implants. So if you're printing with a Robox, you want to increase this to 1/10 of a millimeter. Or so 0.1 or 0.2, depending on the setting that you have for your Robox. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching.